Hi guys, welcome back to my cafe for story time. We're here to read The Strawberry Patch Pancake House, and we left off on chapter 15, page 111. 2 days later, Archer had the day off, as enforced by Gladys, who insisted he needed to balance work with his new family life. After watching him pace around the house for the first half of the day, Iris suggested they go to the spring farmer's market, mostly because he was making her crazy. Archer had perked up at that, and even though he was clearly planning to get things for the diner, Iris figured it still counted as a day off, especially since Olive was along for the trip. Iris had her tight by the hand as they made their way through the stalls. If she'd had a leash, she totally would have used it. She didn't trust this kid for a second, not after her little sleepwalking episode. "Can we get strawberries?" Olive asked. "Not in season yet," Archer said, and Olive frowned. "We'll get something else that's just as good," Iris assured her, even though looking around she saw mostly lettuce and other greenery. She was sure Olive would immediately reject. "Pretty good selection," Archer said, perusing each table as they walked. "We might not be in Paris, but we do know how to have a farmer's market," Iris said dryly, and Archer rolled his eyes. "So what are you going to get?" she asked. "I like to take a lap first and just see what everyone is offering." "Sure, makes sense," Iris said, spotting and waving to a few of her students. "Arugula looks good," Archer said, his forehead creased in thought. It was similar to watching him cook. He was in chef mode. Iris bit down on a smile. Way too many neighbors out here today, and the last thing she needed was to set off the rumor mill by gazing at her boss with a goofy grin on her face. "Puppies!" Olive screeched, stopped Iris in her tracks, and nearly gave her a heart attack. She looked up to see Kira Bennett and half of their pack in tow. "Let's go see them." Olive tugged Iris along behind her through the crowd. "You brought Elizabeth and Benny to the farmer's market?" Iris asked Kira as they approached. Kira smiled, patting the big dogs on their heads. "They're very well behaved." Bennett laughed. "Yeah, Benny only snatched one peanut butter cookie from Annie's booth." "That was a misunderstanding," Kira said, "and we paid for it." "Can I pet the puppies?" Olive asked, eyes wide. Elizabeth, Bennett's biggest dog, was nearly her height, and she gazed at Olive, her tongue lolling out of her mouth. "Sure," Kira said, squatting down to Olive's level. "She likes it when you scratch right here." She demonstrated by scratching between the dog's ears, and Olive followed suit, her face lighting up when the dog nudged closer to her. Iris smiled and looked up to glance at Archer, but apparently they'd lost him. "I was going to introduce you to Archer," she said, "but he's wandered off." Bennett laughed. "How are things going with the new gig?" Iris shrugged. "It's fine." "Oh, and how's life with the chef?" Kira asked, standing back up with a knowing smirk on her face. "Also fine." Fine as in she spent way too much time thinking about how fine he was. Kira's smirk grew, but luckily Olive had moved on to petting Benny and was now getting full-faced licks, and her delighted giggles attracted Kira's attention. "Oh, he likes you," she said, and Olive beamed. "She probably tastes like maple syrup," Iris said with a laugh. "Well, that is the way to Benny's heart. Iris, can we get a dog?" "That's a question for your dad." "Where is he?" Olive asked. "I need to ask him right now." Kira laughed. "I like your spirit, kid." "Why don't we stay here with Olive and you can go track him down?" Bennett said with a not-so-innocent smile, like he knew the last thing Iris should do was spend time alone with her sexy boss. He was starting to fit in with this town a little too well, him and Kira both. "Yeah?" Olive cut off any response Iris was about to give. "I'll stay with the dogs and you go find my dad, and then we'll ask him." Iris glanced back and forth between Bennett and Kira's conniving smiles, and they sighed in defeat. "Fine, I'll go find him. Won't be long." "Have fun," Kira said with a wink. "Don't take your eyes off of her," Iris said, ignoring that comment. "She wanders. If you think this child is going to willingly leave these dogs, then you're crazy. But we'll keep a very close watch, I promise." Kira raised a hand to her heart in a solemn vow, and Iris just glared at her before traipsing off to find Archer. It wasn't hard. He was surrounded by half a dozen septuagenarians and most of the book club. I had a sleepwalker," Marissa was telling him as Iris approached. "The little guy was always ending up in the strangest places. Found him one morning up in this tree house in the backyard." She laughed like that was hilarious, but Archer looked horrified. "Outside?" he croaked. "Don't worry, they'll grow it eventually." "Right. That's very comforting." Did you try the baked ziti I dropped off last week? Carol asked, nudging her friend aside to get closer to Archer. Iris spit down on a laugh. I would love to get a chef's opinion on it. It's always a bit dry if you ask me, Estelle muttered, and the laugh escaped Iris's mouth. Archer stalled. Iris knew for a fact most of the meals the town had dropped off were still frozen solid. Relief flooded Archer's face when he caught sight of her, as though he knew she would save him from having to explain that they were only 3 people and couldn't possibly consume that much food, and also that he was a food snob. Okay, ladies, harassing the new guy time is over now. Off you go. Oh, Iris, you're no fun, Marissa giggled. See you in class, girls. Bye, sweetie. Carol gave her a quick peck on the cheek, followed by more hugs and shoulder pats and goodbyes from all the other ladies. Your adoring fans? He asked as the ladies wandered off. Some of the many, Iris said with a smile. Where's Olive? She's with Karen, Bennett, and their dogs. Oh, and you should brace yourself because now she wants one. Oh, God, am I supposed to get her a dog? The panic was clear in his voice. Iris shook her head with a laugh. You don't have to get her a dog. Okay, good. I don't think we can manage a dog. Iris ignored that we, the one she was not at all sure was wanted to be a part of, and started rifling through the canvas bag slung over Archer's arm. What'd you get? Mostly some fresh herbs, some lettuce, arugula. Everything's green. It's early in the season. Iris frowned. Come with me. She linked her arm through his and tugged him around the crowd. Hi, Annie. Hi, George, she said when they arrived at the bakery table. This, she said, turning to Archer, is the best table at the market, and baked goods are always in season. He smiled, that dimple popping in his cheek, and Iris had to look away lest she do something inappropriate here in the middle of town, like lick her boss's face. Hi, Iris. Hi, Archer. What can I get you? Annie asked. Iris shook the inappropriate thoughts from her head and turned her attention to the table spread with delights. Shortbread cookies, cardamom twist, sugar cookies in the shapes of little bunnies and chicks, chocolate donuts, and iced lemon pound cake were laid out in front of them. Annie had outdone herself this week. We'll take 2 slices of the pound cake, and she turned to Archer. What do you think Olive would like? His brow furrowed in concentration as he considered what Olive might want, and it was that consideration that nearly did Iris in. He was so damn thoughtful when it came to his kid. The bunny cookie. Excellent choices, Annie said, putting their treats in a bag and taking Iris's card for payment. Enjoying the market? She asked Archer. I am, actually. Annie laughed. Don't look so surprised. He smiled. Sorry, I don't mean to be an asshole. It just happens sometimes, Iris finished for him with a pat on the arm. Thanks, Annie, she called, pulling Archer to their next stop. One more thing before we circle back to Olive. She kept her arm linked through his, her hand resting on the curve of his bicep. It was nice, walking side by side with him. It was nice to be out of the house together. Not that it could be anything other than a friendly trip to the farmer's market, but she was allowed to enjoy the feel of Archer's arm beneath her hand and the occasional brush of his hip against hers. Wasn't she? Of course she was. The only dangerous part was that this nice day out together might make her want more of them. Here we are. They stopped at the florist's table. Plenty of colors, she grinned up at him, and his returning smile had her stomach flipping and her cheeks warming. Beautiful, he said, his eyes still on her face, and damn, he was handsome out here in the light of day. All this fresh air was making her lightheaded. Lupita, who was manning the booth today, cleared her throat, and Iris tore her gaze away from Archer's. Hey, Lou. Hi, Iris. Lupita glanced from Iris to Archer, a knowing look on her face, but Iris could not deal with another busybody dreamer today. A bunch of the yellow tulips and a bunch of the pink, please, Iris said before the woman could ask any questions about Archer or Olive or their living arrangement or Archer's family history. Here you are. Lupita handed Iris 2 bundles of flowers wrapped in brown paper, and Archer handed his card over before Iris could get to hers. Thanks, Lou. See you Tuesday for my spring wreath-making class, Iris said before they walked away. I wasn't trying to make you buy me flowers, she said to Archer jokingly, but finding him looking at her intently again. I don't mind buying you flowers. In a professional way, of course, she said, not able to help the teasing smile on her face. Of course, he said with a slight smile of his own. He dipped his head closer to her ear, and his words were warm on her cheek. His hand slid to the small of her back, guiding her through the crowd. The press of his fingers into her body sent sparks skittering down her spine. But stronger than the feeling of Archer's big, warm hand was the feeling of the town watching them. And Iris knew this town. She knew how they thought and how they talked. And if they thought anything untoward was going on between her and Archer, what would that mean for his custody agreement? The town would probably be delighted if they were officially together, but Archer couldn't be seen as someone who had casual flings left and right. What kind of environment would that be for a little girl? Never mind that it was the exact environment that Iris had grown up in, and she'd turned out just fine, except for maybe a bit of an issue with commitment. But that didn't matter. Archer needed to be seen as the responsible dad that he was, and she could not get in the way of that. We should probably find Olive, she said, taking a hard right past the last booth and onto the grassy lawn where she'd last seen Olive and Kira. Archer's hand dropped from her back, and she refused to feel sad about its absence. It was one thing to flirt with Archer in the privacy of his own home, but out here they needed to be careful. She had to be careful with this considerate man and his little girl. The last thing she wanted was to cause problems for either of them. Chapter 16, page 119. I have a great idea, Iris announced as she swept into the kitchen. She'd had a yoga class to teach this evening, so Archer hadn't seen her for dinner with Olive. It had been a silent and awkward meal, but his daughter had eaten 2 servings of pasta with copious amounts of butter and Parmesan on it. So he wasn't going to push her to speak too, one thing at a time. Oh, he asked. A town meeting, she said triumphantly, like this should make sense to him. What about it? Oh, right, I forgot you're an outsider, she said with a teasing smile. Dream Harbor has bi-weekly town meetings where people can bring up any issues pertinent to the community. Okay. She let out a frustrated breath, and he tried not to notice how cute she was when she was excited. But it was impossible. She was adorable. It had been impossible not to notice as she led him through the farmer's market yesterday. And it was impossible now as she hopped up onto her usual stool, eyes bright with her great idea. I thought we could go and ask if anyone had thoughts on the pancake recipe. He wiped his hands on the towel hanging over his shoulder and crossed his arms over his chest. He did not stand like that to make Iris's gaze flick over his biceps. He just happened to be comfortable this way. And if Iris noticed his arms, well, that was not his fault. Let me get this straight, he said. You want me to try and get some kind of town consensus on the pancake recipe? I heard you put poppy seeds in the pancake last week, Archer. She raised a brow in accusation. I did. People did not like it. I know. Okay, so I think this might be a good way to get some more ideas on things to try. I don't think so. Her face fell and he wanted to kick himself, but pleasing Iris was not something that should be on his list of priorities. Keeping the diner afloat and Olive alive were his priorities, not seeing the nanny smile. It's my diner now, and I'm in charge of the menu. I'm going with what I think is best. There was something new in her eyes when she looked at him again, something he hadn't seen from her. She looked pissed. What's it like? She asked with a little scuff. What's what like? To be so damn confident in yourself, to think you know what's best about everything? I don't. No, I'm really curious, because I've never felt that about anything, really. I've never just known what I wanted to be or what I wanted to do, and I've kind of just drifted around. But you, again, that little scuff, you know exactly what you want to do. You're a big, important chef, and you're the expert, so... I'm not, he said, his voice sharp, cutting through her little speech. Not anymore. I'm barely fucking holding on here, Iris. She held his gaze, those green eyes zeroing in on his every insecurity. She lifted her chin. I've lived here my whole life, she said, and a lot of things have changed because things always do. But those pancakes have been the same for my entire life, or whole life. There's comfort in that, Archer. People like that. They need it. I need it. You do? She shrugged, like she'd let him see more than she'd intended when she'd started this conversation. The diner is one of the few places left in town that old folks remember going to when they were kids. It's important to them, so it's important to me. I don't think it's true. What? That you don't know what you want to do with your life? That you're not confident? Iris, you're amazing at what you do, at everything you do. He had yet to see her struggle with anything. From where he stood, Iris didn't drift. She floated. She floated and she danced and she laughed and she just made everyone's life better. She made his life better, even when he felt like everything was falling apart. Nah, she shook off his compliment. You know what they say, jack of all trades, master of none, or something like that. Nobody's a master of anything. Look at me. I can't even make pancakes. He gestured to the mess on the counter, wanting her to forgive him, wanting her to see the truth of him. She relented, giving him a small smile, the soft light of the kitchen catching the gold in her hair. And she was just so tempting. "What's that from?" she asked. Her eyes had flicked down, and she was pointing to one of the scars on his arm, a long one that ran across the top of his forearm right above the wrist. "Oven." He'd been moving too fast, desperate to prove himself to his professor, and his arm had hit the hot oven rack as he was pulling out a fresh batch of croissants. They came out terribly, just to add insult to injury, and his professor had actually spit a bit of one out in front of the whole pastry class. Archer hadn't slept the rest of the week. He ate and breathed croissants, baking batch after batch until they were perfect, because he didn't fail. Or at least he didn't in his old life. He felt exhausted just thinking about it. In this one, her finger hovered over his arm, pointing to another scar. Cast iron skillet. In this one, she trailed a single finger over a scar on the underside of his wrist, and her touch sparked along his skin. She was looking at him again, her head tilted, eyes curious. And suddenly, his old life didn't exist. The only real thing was this kitchen and Iris's fingertip leaving a trail of raised hairs along his arm. He wanted to take her to bed. He wanted to tuck her in. He wanted to... "Broken glass," he said, his voice rough with everything he wanted to do with her, that he couldn't do to her. There were too many things he couldn't do right now. He wanted to growl in frustration. "I didn't know cooking was such a dangerous job." Her finger was still on him, tracing back and forth over that scar. "Restaurant kitchens can get intense," he ground out, struggling for control. "A loss of fast-moving parts. Add heat and sharp objects, and it can get dangerous sometimes." She took her hand away, and Archer had to bite back the shuddering sigh he felt building in his chest. He'd known it was a bad idea to hire Iris as his nanny. He knew he was attracted to her. He knew how precarious a situation it was to have a single woman living under his roof for both of them. But this was so much worse than he'd thought. If Iris was going to look at him like that and touch him like that, what was he going to do? He hadn't smoked since moving here, but suddenly he wished he hadn't given it up. "What kind are you trying tonight?" Archer blinked. "Pancakes." She was talking about pancakes while he was thinking about taking her to bed. "Buttermilk." "Yum." She wiped her finger around the edge of the bowl where the batter had dribbled over and lifted it to her mouth. Archer grabbed her wrist. "Hey, what are you doing?" he asked, leaning closer. What was he doing? Why was he touching her? Why was he leaning across the counter toward her? Why was his entire focus fixed on her luscious mouth? He clearly lost his mind, but she was reeling him in with those damn eyes and that mischievous smile. It was back, and he wanted it to stay. He didn't like that he'd upset her, that he'd slipped into his cocky bastard tendencies. He found that he didn't want to be that guy anymore, at least not around Iris. Licking the batter. The word licking sent fire through his veins and a million inappropriate thoughts through his head. You shouldn't eat raw batter. He was still holding her wrist, and her pulse fluttered beneath his fingers. Her tongue swiped along her bottom lip, and Archer nearly groaned. "I was just going to have a little." The batter was dripping down her finger. "I should probably taste it first. Make sure it's good." His voice was low and rough, and they were far too close, and her pulse had sped up, and this was a bad idea, and his mind blanked as he took Iris's finger in his mouth and licked it clean. He ran his tongue over the length of it, that finger that had just teased along his skin, nipping the tip before he released it with a quiet pop. Her eyes widened, but she didn't pull away. Instead, a small whimper escaped her lips. Oh, God, he wanted to pull her onto the counter and lick the rest of her. The thought slammed into him. It was a visceral need, a demand from every inch of his body. Never mind that his mind was screaming at him to stop, to turn back and find the line he wasn't supposed to cross. He couldn't hear that voice anymore. All he could hear was Iris's breath mingling with his own, like they'd both run to get here. He tugged her closer, his hands still wrapped around her wrists, the taste of pancake batter still on his tongue. Her gaze flaked down to his mouth and lingered there. She licked her own lips like she was thinking about what she wanted to do to his. "Archer." His name sounded like a plea. "Tell me to stop," he nearly begged. If she told him to stop, he would. He would step away, and they could pretend he'd never done that. He'd never tasted her skin. "Tell me to stop, Iris, and go back to your room." Another little whimper. He was close enough now to run his nose along the soft skin of her cheek. He was going to kiss her. He was going to kiss his nanny and ruin absolutely everything. But he couldn't stop himself. He couldn't pull away. He didn't want to. Until he heard the distant ringing of Christmas bells? What? Iris's voice sounded far away and dreamy. She turned from him, and he wanted her back, but she was tugging her wrist away and hopping down from her stool and moving toward the door. The front door where Olive once again was trying to get out in her sleep. The Christmas bells on the door ringing with every attempt. Christ. He let the air rush out of his lungs, let the kitchen and living room rush back into his consciousness, let his body shake off the feel of Iris in his hand. He'd almost kissed her. He'd almost ruined everything. Come on, kid, Iris whispered, ushering Olive past him and back down the hall. Time for bed. He let her tuck Olive in. He waited in the kitchen. She didn't come back. Ooh. Chapter 17, page 127. A few days later, Iris was sitting at Hazel's tiny dining room table sipping a cup of tea. So, she doesn't remember it? Hazel asked, her gaze turning to where Olive and Noah were playing checkers on the coffee table. His nieces Cece and Ivy were sprawled out on the carpet next to them, coloring in their coloring books. Hazel had the bright idea of creating pumpkin spice coloring books to sell to tourists, but the locals loved them, too. Iris personally owned one and had sent one to her mom for Christmas. They'd sold out twice this month already. The girls were currently working on a very creative interpretation of the Pumpkin Spice Cafe, complete with purple pumpkins and a pink Casper in the window. The layout of Hazel's cottage was similar to Archer's, except for the kitchen having walls and being closed off from the living room. But Hazel had co-opted a corner of the living area for a dining room table. From her vantage point, Iris could see Olive jump three of Noah's checkers. The little girl smiled triumphantly as she groaned. Nope, I asked her, and she just looked at me like I was nutty. Hazel's brow furrowed as she took another sip of tea. Anyway, I thought maybe if we came for a daytime visit, she'd stop trying to get over here at night. It's worth a try, Hazel said, and this was the perfect time with Ivy and Cece here for the weekend. Yeah, we like Olive, Ivy shouted from her position in the living room, and Olive gave her a shy smile. The girls had just met an hour ago, but the cousins were happy to let Olive join them in playing with their favorite uncle. The foursome had already made matching friendship bracelets. Yes, we like Olive too, Hazel said. Were you and Kate close, Cyrus asked. Not very, but she used to bring Olive into the bookstore all the time. Iris found herself wishing she'd known Kate better. Maybe this would have helped Olive get through this whole thing. While Dr. Bloomfield, Olive's therapist, had assured her that children were resilient, Iris still couldn't imagine losing her mother at such a young age, or now for that matter. Noah, please tell me you're letting her win, Iris said, shaking off her melancholy for Olive. If this little girl could still find it in her to laugh at Noah's horrible checker skills, then so could she. I really wish I could, he said, but she's a killer. Olive's the best at checkers, Cece said, coming to stand beside the coffee table. Yep, the best at checkers, Ivy repeated, and her cousin shot her a look that said she didn't like to be mimicked, but would allow it for the sake of complimenting their new friend. Good girl, Olive, Hazel said. Show him no mercy. Thanks, babe. Hazel grinned at him, and he winked back. How's the trip you guys are planning, Iris asked. I'm still worried about leaving the store, but Noah almost has me convinced we should go. We're definitely going, he called, and Hazel rolled her eyes. We'll see. Iris smiled. She understood why Olive kept trying to sneak over here. It was nice here. It felt like a home, like people that loved each other lived here. You could feel it. Archer's house still smelled like fresh paint and IKEA furniture. Hey, Olive, Iris said, an idea striking her. What's your favorite color? Yellow, she answered without hesitation. If Iris could have the confidence of a kindergartner declaring their favorite color, she'd be all set. We should repaint your room. Olive's head spun so fast to face her, Iris's poltergeist fears almost reignited. Really? Paint it yellow? Iris shrugged. Sure. Yay! Olive was up and dancing, and the girls joined her chanting, Yellow, yellow, and the checkers game was forgotten. Shouldn't you check with Archer? Hazel asked, a bemused expression on her face as Noah joined in the dancing. Probably, but I don't think he'll mind. She didn't actually know that at all, but after Archer had licked her finger 2 nights ago, she'd been avoiding him. She didn't really feel up for a chat about redecorating, not when she'd been about to pour that entire bowl of batter over her head just so he would lick her everywhere else. It seemed best to steer clear. What do you think about sleeping with your boss? She blurted out, and Noah froze mid-dance move. Hey girls, he said too loudly, how about we move this dance party outside? Yeah, they all shouted. He followed the girls racing outside the door, flashing Iris an amused smile on his way out. Hazel spun to face her, eyebrow arched in question. What's going on over there, Iris? Iris sighed with all the drama she was currently feeling, which was a lot. He almost kissed me. He what? Hazel looked murderous. This is unacceptable, totally inappropriate. Hazel, how dare he? Doesn't he realize he holds all the power here? Hazel, I mean, really taking advantage of the situation like that. Hazel, her friend blinked in surprise. What? I 1000% wanted him to. Oh, her eyes widened behind her glasses. Huh. Yeah, I know. So what are you going to do? Iris groaned. I don't know. I mean, objectively, I know it's a very bad idea. I need this job, and I even kind of like Olive now, and I don't want to mess with her healing process. Plus, a free place to live has been great. I actually have some money in my bank account for the first time in maybe ever. Hazel nodded. Okay, good. So I think that's your answer. But Iris hated that answer. On the other hand, she started, and Hazel closed her eyes and sighed. Just hear me out. On the other hand, he's really hot. Okay, that didn't sound like the best reasoning. Iris, plenty of people are hot. Go find a different hot person. Iris groaned again. She didn't want a different hot person, and maybe that should alarm her more than anything. But now she was on a mission to convince Hazel this was a good idea. As though Hazel was the one in charge, and with her permission, Iris could have sex with the hot chef guilt-free. It's not just that. He was also dedicated and persistent and sexy, and those forearms haunted her dreams, and she was getting off track. He'd come back for his daughter. He'd come back for his daughter. He was honorable and sweet when he wanted to be, and talented, so freaking talented. Hadn't Hazel ever heard of competence porn? Watching this man chop veggies had made Iris hornier than anything in a long time. There's this tension between us, she said, instead of listing all of Archer's best attributes. Maybe we need to just get it out of our systems, and no one needed to know, except apparently Hazel. Hazel looked at her over the rim of her mug like Iris was the dumbest person to ever live. It was very possible that she was. Do you really think that this has worked for anyone in the history of the world? Hazel asked. When has sex ever made things easier to walk away from? When it's really bad, Iris suggested. So you want to have sex with Archer because you think it will be really bad and you'll be able to move on and work for him with no problem after that? Damn Hazel and her damn reasoning. Iris should have tried this with someone else. What was Kira up to today? She made questionable choices all the time. No, Iris confessed. I don't think it would be bad at all. The feel of Archer's tongue on her finger lapping up the batter echoed through her body, the memory of it nearly as strong as the real thing. No, it wouldn't be bad at all. If that tongue could make her feel like that from just licking her finger, just imagine what he could do if he licked. Okay, so I think you need to take sex off the table. Or do it on the table. Iris shook her head. Right, of course. You're 100% right. She wasn't stupid. She knew what she was doing every time she snuck out of her room to talk to him in the dim light of the kitchen, to ogle his arms, to flirt with him, letting her shirt slip down her arm, flaunting her shorts that were barely shorts. She'd broken down his defenses, and all he was trying to do was prove to himself, his daughter, and the entire town that he was dad material. Being seduced by the nanny probably wasn't going to help his case. God, she was the worst. Noah and his girls raced back into the house. Is it safe? He asked, shaking water from his hair. It started to rain. He grabbed a towel from the hall closet and tossed it onto Olive's head. She giggled from underneath it. It's safe, Iris said, and Hazel raised a brow. It is. You're right. I will be keeping things strictly professional from here on out. Hazel still looked skeptical, and Iris was still feeling skeptical. But she was determined now. No more flirting with the boss. No more sexy eyes and suggestive smiles. Nope, she was all business. Ha! All business was never something Iris had been called, but she could do it. She got up and went over to help Olive dry off. She rubbed a towel over her head, savoring the giggles still coming from underneath. If she screwed things up with Archer, she would definitely have to leave. And oddly enough, she didn't want to leave this kid. She didn't want to think about how Olive would feel if she did leave. Not that she thought Olive liked her all that much, but she tolerated her. She talked to her and even occasionally ate the food Iris gave her. And frankly, that seemed like a lot at the moment. She didn't want to think about Olive having to get readjusted to a new grown-up in her life. Not yet. All dry? She asked, pulling the towel off. Olive's hair was a wild mess around her head. Cece and Ivy were walking around with towels still over them, pretending to be ghosts or zombies. It was unclear. Olive laughed at them before turning back to Iris. Can we have ice cream for dinner? She asked. Don't push it, kid. We still have to break the news to your dad that we're repainting that pink nightmare of a room. Olive frowned. Oh, stop. Your dad is a good cook. Maybe he'll let you help again tonight. That got Olive to brighten slightly. Here, take an umbrella, Hazel said, joining them at the door. It's really pouring now. Thanks, and thanks for the pep talk. Anytime, and thanks for the checkers game, Noah. I still want a rematch, he said, shooting a fake glare at Olive. Olive grinned. I'll see if we can arrange that, Iris said with a laugh, but during the daytime and with permission. Right, Olive? Iris earned herself a scowl for that, but she ignored it and steered Olive out the door. Bye, Olive, Ivy and Cece called from the doorway. Bye, girls. Iris tugged Olive back under the umbrella from where she'd scooted out into the rain to wave to her new friends. Time to go home and face Archer and act like he was nothing but her boss. So good, guys. I like this part. That's the part you read these books for, you know, and it's happening basically in the middle of the book. So we left off on page 135, chapter 18, and we will do that tomorrow. Guys, this is a lot of fun. I really enjoy this, and I really enjoy actually this background because I feel like the strawberry background's great, you know, but I like to switch it out because I feel like it's really neat. I feel like I'm actually in a coffee shop, and that's what I want when you guys watch these videos. I want you to feel like the mood, so you want to read, like get all into it. Yeah, so I know I'm not the best reader, but I feel like I'm improving. So yeah, you guys, and thank you for all the new subscribers. I see a lot of you are joining. Welcome to book club, because we're gonna have a lot of fun, and I want you guys to talk to me more in the comments about what you think about the book, and you know, I don't know, it's just a lot of fun to talk about. But I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye, guys.